The sweet corn is ready, so we had sweet corn for lunch today. Today I'm going to just show you a quick video on how to can sweet corn. I boiled this at lunch, and then I took it out of the water and set it in a pan to cool so that'd be easier to handle. Reserved the liquid from the boiling to fill the jars with, and then I ate dinner and cleaned it up, and now I'm ready to can my corn. Before I started cutting all of the corn that I've already chopped up over here, I started my water in my pressure canner so that it would be ready to go once my jars were filled, and I could just drop them in and start the pressure canner. There's a lot of different tools available to chop corn off the cob with. I've tried them all, and I don't really have anything against any of them, but I still prefer just using a knife and cutting straight down off the cob. It just gives me a better cut where I can get a big chunk, like you're eating almost corn on the cob when you get it off the jar later. I usually put my corn on a cookie sheet when I cut the corn off the cob because it tends to shoot out everywhere, and this keeps the mess right on the pan instead of on my counter and makes for an easier cleanup. You just cut straight down. Don't scrape the cob like you do for cream corn, and just cut up all of your corn. Fill your jars. So I'm going to cut this one up. The biggest thing, corn is really easy to can actually. The biggest problem people generally have with it is that they overpack their jars. Corn needs to be very, very, very loosely packed. So for an example, I just take the corn that I chopped up and just drop it in. I don't shake the jar at all or tap it down. You just fill it until it is at about 1 inch headspace, a little bit less. I like to leave it really loose. And the reason is corn expands a little bit when it's in the pressure canner, and you don't want to explode your jars. So once that's all done and you have all of your jars filled, then I put all of my filled jars on my pan, again, to keep the mess down. And I take my reserve water from the from the boiling process and just fill the jar right up to 1 inch headspace. And if you're wondering what 1 inch headspace is, 1 inch headspace is that bottom ring along your jar. So you just fill all your jars with liquid right on top, right up to 1 inch headspace. And now a pressure canner holds 7 to 10 jars, depending on what size. Don't mind the dogs in the background because there's always activity around the house. Like I was trying to say, a pressure canner holds 7 to 10 jars, depending on what size the jars are. So if you can like I do and just make it when you're making a meal and then can the leftovers, eat what you can what you can't eat, then you may not end up with a full pressure canner batch each time, and that is totally okay to be short a couple of jars. The last thing you want to put in here is 1 teaspoon of canning salt per pint of corn. Just drop it right in there into that hot liquid. If you find that your liquid has cooled a little bit or cooled completely before you start canning, you may want to warm it back up a little bit because you are putting it in boiling water and pressure canning it, so you don't want to have a huge temperature difference. So you never want to can with cold water. You always want to use warm or hot water, and hot water for it. Once you have everything in here, I kind of just jiggle everything around a bit and make sure that all the bubbles are out. Bubbles down here are airspace, And what that does is as it adjusts, the air comes to the top and drops the headspace level. And then you may not have a good seal. So after you've jiggled your jars a little bit and gotten all the air bubbles out, just adjust the headspace as needed. Back up to your 1 inch with your water level. And another reason that you don't want to overpack it is you want all of the vegetable to be underneath the water line when you're canning it. Then you take your clean rings and new lids and twist them tight. And drop these into your pressure canner. So I have my pressure canner boiling, rolling. As I said, I started it when I started doing all of my chopping. So I just drop these in to the hot water, one at a time, very carefully, don't splash. And if you don't have a full batch that's gonna fill the whole thing, you want to spread them out evenly around the canner so that they're all getting an even amount of pressure as they can. Don't just fill one side. And then my pressure canner has a arrow to arrow on it where you put the canner on and slide it in. Corn is canned at 10 pounds of pressure for 55 minutes. So for the video's sake, I'm going to turn it this way a little bit. Your dial here, 10 pounds is right here at the top on mine. This will go up quite quickly because my water was already boiling. Your time measurement does not start until you hit your full 10 pounds of pressure. That's when you start your timing. You don't want your pressure gauge, you have to watch this because it will fluctuate. It will keep going up and building pressure, and you don't want to have anything happen. So you have to really watch your pressure gauge and pay attention to that. If it starts going up too high, you can adjust by turning your heat down on your stove, or you can adjust by taking a knife, or I sometimes use my finger, and just jiggling your pressure valve a little bit, and that will release steam and allow the pressure to go back down. My valve has already popped, so it's already building steam inside of the canner, and it's already starting to build pressure, so it shouldn't take too long. Once the time is up and your 55 minutes is up, you turn your heat off and don't move your canner. Don't try to open your canner. Don't try to de-steam your canner all the way down at one time. You could crack or break your jars. So you just turn your heat off, leave it there, let the whole thing de-steam until this little pressure knob comes down on its own, and then it's safe to crack the seal and open it up and remove your jars. So they're still going to be very hot, so I recommend having a jar remover, which, just looking for mine, looks like this. And then you just pick up the jars and move them onto a towel on your counter to cool overnight, and then you can label it up and you have your corn stored for the season. Generally I do this every day for about 2 weeks, because as the corn comes we just can it up fresh, but it's super easy to do, and I hope you enjoy this and I hope you find it useful. If you do, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you so much.